Hello. If you know me, you will probably know that I am in recovery from anorexia, and also I have OCD. That's not relevant to this video, but I thought I'd just say it. I'm also an actor. Being an actor is also not relevant to this video, but today I wanted to talk about recovery accounts and the impact that they can have on people, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I hate that. When I was quite unwell as a 17-year-old and I was in an inpatient unit, I had a recovery account on Instagram. I was like obsessed with it, and most of the people that I was inpatient with also had recovery accounts. This was back in 2016. There were so many people in this community, and it was called the recovery community. Now looking back as an adult who has had a lot of therapy and different life experiences, I can see that it really was not a recovery community at all whatsoever. I think it's really important to talk about it because I think with the addition of social medias like TikTok and the age of people using social media being even younger, and younger people having access to like iPhones, it can be so toxic. Now my experience in the so-called recovery community was that I made a lot of friends, or people that I thought were my friends, but realistically what we had in common was the fact that we had eating disorders. It became a very competitive, very triggering kind of environment to be in. All I needed to do to trigger myself was go on Instagram, essentially, and I would see people posting body checks and how much they'd eaten, and I did it too. I hold my hands up and say I did it too, because it was what everyone did. Honestly, it feels weird calling it a recovery account because realistically it wasn't at all. It was an anorexic account. It was like, I have anorexia account. I was saying such private stuff to this community of people, but at one point I actually had quite a lot of followers, because this is the other really twisted, sick thing, is that when I was inpatient and I had a NG tube, so a feeding tube, I actually got more followers because people were kind of like, oh wow, like she's in hospital, we want to see what's going on. And that was quite a reoccurring theme across the community. Like, you would get more attention from other people in the community if you were more unwell. Now I see things on TikTok which are very similar, if not worse, honestly. I'm not sure what's down with the kids nowadays, but when I was in the recovery community, there was a really popular website. I actually don't know how you pronounce it. It was called like Sarah. I'm saying like the same thing, but it was an anonymous like messaging site, kind of like when I was back in like middle school, and there was one, oh, what was it called? I don't know, it's really going to annoy me, I'll try and figure it out. But anyway, this one was called Sarah. Loads of people would have this like link to their account for that in their bio, and you could leave them an anonymous message. Sometimes that would be used really nicely, but I am going to read out a few examples of some of the messages, anonymous messages that I got on my recovery account, which was a private account. So I didn't just let anyone follow me. It was other people in the community that were sending me these messages. Trigger warning for just trigger warning because it's for horrible messages. Your face is such an ugly shape, you look like a witch. First one. Thank you. You're actually so ridiculous. I don't think you realise how you are as a person. Here is a really horrific one. Stop lying to yourself. You were never ill. You never even looked like it. You will never be skinny. You always just the best. Fake pig. I think they meant fat. It's actually a slur, but I think they meant fat. Fake pig. So just quit it and stop trying to be something you're not human. Quite a lot of that I don't understand, but the gist of it is horrible. You didn't deserve that food. You should puke it back up or do something because you're looking more like a whale each day. What's with your mouth? It's look like you got 100 teeth. Looks like a dolphin smile. Those are just some of the messages that I was sent anonymously from the recovery community. I don't know if this is still a thing now, but honestly, it was horrendous. This was from people who were supposedly in the recovery community who were also going through the same thing. And you know, I've been in hospital for anorexia, and I come out and I'm like, I've got this community of people, and then suddenly I'm getting messages of people saying all of this horrific stuff and saying I shouldn't eat and that I look like a witch, and that interesting, like quite creative insult of that I look like I've got 100 teeth. I'm actually, just a fun fact for you, I'm actually missing a tooth. Like when my baby teeth came through, I was like, had one less than normal because I think they assumed it's because I was born prematurely. But yeah, so I've actually got less teeth than I should have. But it made me really insecure, and I was already trying to recover from anorexia, and I was already feeling incredibly insecure. It is so toxic. Those types of people are definitely still in the space. I also don't know who sent me those messages. They could have been anyone. It could have been multiple people. It could have just been one person that just didn't like me. But I'm sure that there are people like that still exist in this recovery community. What I see more of now is actually on TikTok, and it's not the type of content I consume. If it comes up on my For You page, unfortunately I do have to see that with my own two eyes, is full of young people body checking and doing what I eat in a days and not eating anywhere near enough that they should, and demonizing food and giving food moral values, and it just, and like the comments are just full of people comparing and talking and about their perceived eating disorder and trauma dumping, and saying like, I wish I looked like you, when someone looks really thin and unwell. Honestly, it's even worse in my opinion than what it was like in the recovery community. Although that stuff was horrific, it was kind of private, and it was people kind of sharing their really difficult times, whereas, and it was like for more private viewing, whereas this, like TikTok, is so public. What I see on TikTok more often than not, comments upon comments upon comments of young people, young girls mainly, sharing this like really personal stuff online for anyone to see about like the way they feel about their body, like their eating habits. Not triggering specifically necessarily to me, because I am a 25-year-old woman who has been in anorexia recovery for a long time and had relapses and blah blah blah, and I am very aware of what triggers me. Like, you know, a comment online, like seeing someone else comment online like that isn't going to trigger me, but it does upset me because these people are so young and are just very openly saying this on a public platform, and people are like agreeing with them, and then it turns into like this like twisted competition, and it is horrible to think that there are such young people so easily seeing so much content. I think the difference when it was kind of like on Tumblr or on like private Instagrams, it was kind of not an underground community, but it was harder to get into. People wouldn't accept you on their accounts unless you also had like an established account type of thing. But now with social media like TikTok, it's just everywhere. On top of that, diet culture everywhere. I'm not saying that just seeing that content is going to give you an eating disorder. It can potentially cause disordered views around food, and a lot of it perpetuates diet culture, which is, in my view, incredibly unhealthy, and I hate diet culture. And if you already have an eating disorder and you see that content and you're young and you're impressionable, it can very easily make you feel like, I need to be doing what they're doing, or like they're iller than I am, they're sicker than I am, I don't look like them, and cause you to then do unhealthy things. When you're 16, when you're 17, you think you know everything. You think that you're like, I'm almost an adult. Like, honestly, my perspective on things is so incredibly different then, and I'm also only 25 and have a lot more growing to do, and do not think that I know everything, but I do think that my perspective has definitely changed, and I've had a lot of life experience, and I'm older, and I look back and I think, what the actual fuck was that? I wish I'd had someone who'd been through it and who was older say like, that is not healthy, it's not good for you, and you should try and stay away from that if you want to try and get better. I think being in that recovery community made me sicker. I think if you are in any of these like recovery community spaces and they are full of triggers, then it's good to assess whether it's something that you really need to be seeing, or why you are part of this community in the first place. Is it to trigger yourself? Is it to get validation? Like, what's the reason? And I think being honest to yourself, honest with yourself, is very, very difficult. And I actually think the older that you get and the more life experience you have, the easier it is to be able to actually reflect and be like, okay, I can honestly say, like, I'm not doing this for the right reasons. I think that's harder to do when you're younger. I think it's especially hard when you have an eating disorder and you want to act like everything's fine and you're completely fine and what you're doing is fine, that you're not ill. Like, so it is really difficult. I can't remember where I was going with that. It was like I was getting somewhere, I was getting to a point, and then the point disappeared. I think if I had been able to kind of distance myself from that community, my ability to recover or make a kind of fuller recovery would have been easier without the constant comparison and the constant triggers and the kind of unhealthy competition. If I can give you advice, I would say please stay away from these spaces. I don't think that they are helpful whatsoever. You don't need to see numbers, you don't need to see what I eat in a day, you don't need to see people body checking, you don't need to be comparing yourself to other people with eating disorders. It is not helpful. I can say from a personal perspective that I know that I would look at that stuff to trigger myself. It's not helpful. My dissertation, funnily enough, was on using applied theatre for patients in eating disorder units. So eating disorders and mental health issues and just mental health awareness, and I have OCD as well, so OCD, those things are also like important to me to talk about, and as well as acting, because they're, yeah, it's all important to me. And I honestly, I don't know how I'm going to edit this because I've just talked and talked and I actually don't know how much of it makes any sense and whether I got to any succinct point in this. I hope that this video was like helpful or interesting. If you didn't know about the recovery community, or has maybe made you reconsider what you consume on social media, or just background noise whilst you clean your room. Thanks for watching and I'll speak to you soon.